Welcome back to Business to Motivation, the show where ambition turns into action. I'm Dave, and today we're tackling something that shows up for every entrepreneur, freelancer, startup founder, and business leader sooner or later, asking for help at the right time. Because let's be honest, a lot of people wait way too long. They wrestle with the problem in private. They tell themselves they should be able to figure it out. They push through late nights, extra stress, and messy decisions. And then, when they finally reach out, the situation has gotten expensive. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's their mental health. Maybe it's their reputation or their team. Here's the shift successful people make. They don't treat help like a last resort. They treat it like a tool. Asking at the right time isn't weakness. It's strategy. So today, we'll break down why timing matters, what keeps people silent, what it costs to wait, and how to know when it's time to bring in support. Let's start with a myth that sounds motivating but quietly destroys progress. The idea that you're supposed to do it all alone. Business culture sometimes rewards the image of the lone warrior. The entrepreneur who never struggles. The leader who always has the answer. The founder who carries everything on their back and somehow never cracks. But look closely at anyone who has built something great. A high-performing CEO, a winning athlete, a top creator, a founder who scaled a company beyond the garage phase. None of them did it solo. Somewhere in their story, there are mentors, advisors, coaches, partners, communities, and teams. Even the most independent people you admire have a support system. It might be quiet, but it's there. And here's the real problem with isolation. It slows growth. When you try to carry every responsibility yourself, it doesn't just make you tired. It makes you less effective. You burn out. You make worse decisions. You miss opportunities because you're too busy putting out fires. You take longer to learn lessons someone else already paid for. A lot of the time, it's not even that you're incapable. It's that your pride is doing the driving. And pride is expensive. So why do so many smart, ambitious people wait? Usually it comes down to a few familiar patterns. First, fear. The fear of looking weak. Some people think that asking questions makes them look inexperienced, like they're not qualified to be in the room. But refusing support doesn't make you look strong when things go wrong. It just makes the consequences bigger. Second, perfectionism. That voice that says, if I want it done right, I have to do it myself. That mindset can work when things are small, but it breaks the moment you need to grow. Growth requires delegation. Growth requires trust. Growth requires letting someone else touch the work so you can focus on what only you can do. Third, ego. And ego is tricky because it often disguises itself as independence. People tell themselves, I'm just being strong, when really they're avoiding the discomfort of saying, I don't know. But real leadership isn't pretending you have unlimited skills. Real leadership is knowing where your limits are before those limits create a crisis. A strong leader can say, I need expertise here. And that sentence can save months of lost time, thousands of dollars, and a lot of unnecessary stress. Now let's talk about the cost of waiting, because business has a brutal rule: delays compound. A small financial leak turns into debt. A simple misunderstanding on a team turns into tension, then resentment, then toxic culture. A basic marketing problem turns into months of weak sales, self-doubt, and panic spending on random tactics. And what makes it worse is that problems are usually cheaper in the beginning. Early on, help is preventative. Later on, help is damage control. That difference matters. Think of it like taking care of a car. If you hear a weird sound and you handle it early, it might be a simple fix. If you ignore it because you're busy and you don't want to deal with it, one day the engine gives up. The same thing happens in business. What you avoid today becomes what you pay for tomorrow. So here's the real question. How do you know it's the right time to ask for help? Not eventually, not when everything is on fire, but the right time. Here are a few signs that show up again and again. 1. Your progress keeps stalling. You're working, you're trying, but you keep hitting the same wall. 2. Stress starts to drown out clarity. You're so overwhelmed you can't think straight, and now you're reacting instead of leading. 3. You keep repeating the same mistake. Same type of client issue, same hiring mistake, same pricing problem, same cash flow stress. And 4, Your growth is outpacing your skills, which is a great problem to have, but only if you respond to it. High performers don't wait for collapse. They ask early. They get input before the emergency, not during it. They don't treat advice like an admission of failure. They treat it like a shortcut to better decisions. And in practical terms, asking for help doesn't always mean hiring an expensive consultant or building a huge team overnight. Sometimes help is simpler than that. Help can look like sending a message to a mentor and saying, "Can I get your perspective on this?" Help can look like delegating one task that's draining your time so you can work on the thing that actually moves the business forward. Help can look like hiring one specialist for one problem, an accountant to clean up the books, a designer to tighten the brand, a marketer to build a plan, a lawyer to protect your contracts. Sometimes help is joining a community where you're surrounded by people who have already been through the stage you're in. And sometimes help is simply admitting the most powerful sentence a builder can say, "I don't know enough about this yet." That kind of honesty doesn't shrink you. It expands you. Because the moment you admit what you don't know, you can finally start learning the right thing. And it's amazing how often one conversation saves you weeks or months of frustration. So as we bring this home, I want you to hold on to one idea. Successful people aren't the ones who never need support. They're the ones who recognize they need it before a temporary problem becomes permanent damage. Business isn't a solo survival contest. It's progress through learning, adapting, collaborating, and getting better every season. The right support at the right time can raise your confidence, sharpen your decisions, reduce your stress, and open doors you simply can't reach by yourself. And sometimes the bravest, most leadership-filled thing you can say is, "I need guidance." Because growth often begins exactly where ego ends. Thanks for listening to Business to Motivation. If this episode helped you, share it with someone who's building something meaningful right now. And remember, asking for help doesn't slow success. Waiting too long often does. Until next time, keep building, keep learning, and keep moving forward.